Cora Masters Barry, and she clearly has nothing new under the sun. We are joined this evening by the one, the only, Mayor Bowser. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, we're here at Nothing New Under the Sun, and Miss
Can you
Cora,
hear me?
Yeah,
we
now.
can actually hear you. You sound great.
Thank you.
There's nothing new under the sun, but there is a movement right now going on that you two are all a part of, and that nothing new under the sun, Miss Masters Barry, you've done a phenomenal job in developing and creating intergenerational leadership. Can you share with us just how you two have come together and why it's so important that there's an intergenerational relationship between women, those in the movement, and our community in general?
Well, first of all, let me say welcome, Mayor Bowser. I'm so glad that you came on. You took the time out of your busy schedule to be here. And as I always say, I got two MBs that are very, very important to me in my life. The first MB was my husband, Mayor Marion Barry, and my other favorite MB is the mayor of the District of Columbia, her hometown, Mayor Bowser. Two of my favorite people.
Thank you.
You know, Mayor Bowser is not only just a friend to me, but you know, she's a friend to DC. She empowers this city. She protects its residents. And like Marion, she fights for the least, the lost, the left, and the left out. Did I get that straight? Because that was his mantra. And they have that in their DNA. So I'm so happy for her to be here. She has deep roots in the city. Her parents raised her in Washington, D.C., and she loves to claim that she is the mayor of her hometown. And so we are so fortunate to have her here as our mayor and as somebody that Marion loved so much. And they had a mentor-mentee relationship. We had, when she was running for office, not too long before he actually died, but we didn't know it at the time. He was determined that she would win. And he was, you know, counseling her and telling her things. And sometimes he would call her 10 and 15 times a day. And the Mayor would say, I love Mayor Barry. He called me 10 times a day. How many of those do I have to answer? And I was like, he just has different things that comes up in his mind and he just wants to share it. But that was a great relationship. And so, Muriel, tell me about your relationship with Marion Barry and why it was special.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to characterize, but let me just count myself as lucky to have got to know him. And for somebody who grew up in DC, Marion Barry was larger than life. He was a legend. He's a 4-time elected mayor, something that will never happen in this town again. And he was there from the beginning of our city's limited home rule. And he saw it in the best of times, the worst of times, and the best of times again. So he was just an incredible person. So imagine me, a kid, gets to grow up and be on the city council and serve with him. Where sit on the dais with him. It's really unreal. If I ever kind of step back from it and think about it, it's quite an unreal experience. But you are right, Cora, to focus on that period of time that I won a primary. We weren't even on the same side of that primary, but I won a primary, and like good leaders do, he saw it as his responsibility to impart what he knew about running a very complicated government, what he knew about being a big city mayor, which I have to tell you, I don't know that I focused on at the time I was running, but you go into a different level of leadership because you're a leader of your city, but you're also among big leaders of our country. And so he really imparted all of those pearls of wisdom on me. And he had kind of a special liking of me, I think, because he knew my dad. And that was always a connection.
Yeah, he loved it. Your father and he were like really like aces. And one of the first things Munson, that the first official act that Mariel did when she became mayor was to name the summer jobs program the Marion Barry Jr. Summer Youth Jobs Program, which of course he created, but this was an homage to his legacy. That was the first thing that she signed as mayor, other than, signing that she was going to be mayor. So that was very important. And I'm sorry, huh? Were you about to say something?
No.
No, and then the other
No,
thing,
go ahead.
and she didn't just do that, but she did something that was spectacular. She established the Marion Barry Commission, a legacy commemorative commission, and out of that came, with her courage and with her vision, 8-foot bronze statue that sits on Pennsylvania Avenue. I call it the main street of America, and right on the front of the district building, or our city hall, if you will. And no matter who's president for years and years to come, but forever, they ride down Pennsylvania Avenue in their inaugural parade. They got to wave back at Marion Barry. Muriel, how did you get that done? Because that was not something anybody would have expected to happen, considering how the city has changed. And, Marion had a complicated history, and to have that was amazing. How did you do that?
You know how I did it, Madam Chair. You know how. And I did it because that's what was right. That's what the people wanted. And Marion was DC. Like, we claim him. You know how we natives are. But I know that's a joke for all y'all from California or wherever.
Okay, all right, you gonna do that? Okay.
Somebody's from California.
We love our Californians too. But Marion did, and he had DC has changed a lot of ways, but people were attracted to DC because of the culture, the grit of it, the people. It was city and small town. It was real urban, but also real country in some ways. And so it was people who were wildly successful. People made mistakes. People have come back. All of those things are DC. And Marion was just the embodiment of it. So his death it came too soon, for so many, even though, he lived a long, good life, but still, we weren't really ready to let him go. And so it was just fitting that we had a commission of people from all walks, people who knew Marion, people who were in the arts, people who were interested in culture and government, come together to make some recommendations about how he could be remembered. And I thought it took a commission, because you know how sometimes things are done quickly or in a slapshot way, and I didn't do that for him. And I knew that Cora's vision was also very important, and I told her, you might remember this, Cora, when you spoke to the Washington Post about the statue. I called you up and I was like, damn, girl, that article was it. It was everything. Because it talked about the art and the power of art. In recognizing this man. And this was an artist and a piece of art that is recognized and renowned, and is going to not just be in history books about government, but it is going to tell the story about how art can be used to describe struggle, triumph, come back.
That's right. Come back. That's right.
It's going out. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You back?
I'm back. I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. No, you're absolutely right. And when I spoke that day, there's a picture of us. I said Marion Barry did not just make a comeback, he came all the way back. And that ended up being a slogan in the city, because he didn't just come back from prison and get back in office as a council member. He came all the way back to become mayor again. And as I may have said on one of your shows before, Munson, when we went up on Capitol Hill, one of the senators said that Marion Barry did something that only Lazarus would do. He came back from the dead. But even with that, the moxie that it took to do the statue is also the moxie that it took for you. I woke up one morning and somebody called me at 5 o'clock in the morning and said, your mayor has lost her mind. And I'm like, what did she do? Did she beat somebody up or something? They said, turn on the television. I turned on the television and 16th Street had Black Lives Matter. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Set a national trend. And I called her, and I'm not going to tell you, I love my mayor, I respect her, but I said, you are bad sister. I said, no disrespect meant. And that was so, tell me what made you do that? What were you thinking? I mean, a lot of people like, oh, I know you had something to do with it. I said, I know nothing. The mayor did this on her own.
So if you walked in downtown DC and saw National Guard, Bureau of Prisons, federal police from God knows where with no badges, blocking DC residents from walking down 16th Street, what would you do?
I don't know if I'd have been that great, that brilliant, but you did what you did.
Like, we don't have an army, okay? That's not what we have. But we do have what I was told we were more right, we're politically right. We pushed back. We couldn't lever our streets. Literally had no choice but to fight back. My job as mayor is not to roll over for Donald Trump or anybody else, but always protect DC and DC residents, our autonomy, our police department, our dollars, you name it.
Have there been any
I learned a long time ago.
You learned a long time ago what?
Go ahead.
No, I was asking you, did you get
you got it? Somebody. Oh yeah, I've got negative feedback, but it pales in comparison to the positive feedback. I'll tell you that. People were like, thank God somebody finally punched him in the face. And this is the thing I know about Donald Trump, and I know you know him too. Like, people who punch, they know when they get punched back, they can only respect it because he knows what he did.
Mm-hmm. Well, you sure. Matter of fact, you didn't just, that was your first punch. And then I looked up and you had street lights on the thing all night long.
Well, kind of.
No, you did. And you did one other thing. I think you didn't pay the room rent for the soldiers. You was doing all kind of stuff. Look at the protests. Look at the videos on.
In a political stunt to attack peaceful protests. We saw the American military moved around our country like toy soldiers to intimidate Americans in Washington, D.C. And Americans across the country should be scared about that.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round. And you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up. Unafraid, I rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I rise up, I like the waves, I rise up, in spite of the
The Black Lives Matter mural is a representation of an expression of our saying no, but also identifying and claiming a part of our city that had been taken over by federal forces to make it a place for healing, strategizing, protest, and redress.
The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move.
I don't know what to say. I'm really kind of choked up because I've never seen it before.
It's a great
If
video.
I had known that was coming, I didn't even know that was coming. I come and I just wouldn't have no conversation. That video says it all. It makes me so proud. It makes me so proud. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. I mean, I can't say it enough. That plaza has meant a lot to the world. I don't know how many now have replicated it all over the world, different versions, but you know, street art to justice. That's what that really boiled down to. And as you said, it's a message. You can relay messages through art.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and a very, very, very prominent artist called me one day when this happened, and he was emotional. He said, "This is and he is a man who does art all over this country. If you ride down highways in Florida or in Oklahoma and you see this public art on the highways and all, he does that." And he was crying, and he said, "This is the best public art I've ever seen in my entire career."
Wow.
He saw it as art.
Yes.
So I just want you to know, but that place has meant a lot because this is also where you stood with last public appearance that John Lewis had. You stood there with him, with your arms folded, and him with the mask.
Yeah.
What did that mean to you? How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, it came about because Congressman Lewis's office called us, and I think they knew that his days were short, and he wanted to be in DC. He wanted to be in the public, but more than that, he wanted to stand with young because his job to encourage. He said he just wanted to see it for himself and be there. But a tender moment, and something he said to me was, he looked over his shoulder and he said, now he was the youngest speaker at the March on Washington, and he was the living speaker from the March on Washington. And he turned and he looked at the Capitol Hilton and he said, I don't want to.
He said what?
We stayed there before the march. He looked at the Hilton and he said, that's the hotel we stayed in before the march. Just as a little tidbit to show that this was kind of a full circle he was drawing in his life. And he was just a generous, kind person, and we lost a giant in him. He saw a lot. He saw a lot.
He and Marion, they were counterparts, and so it was an honor for me to stand next to you when when the car came by carrying his body. I was not prepared for the emotional reaction I had. I was almost unconsolable, and I mean, I wasn't, but there was so much coming up out of me that came from the movement, knowing that he had sacrificed his whole life for justice, and it just came over me. And the next thing you knew, it was like that. I went back to my days. I was in the days of Black Power, and I just felt that. And that's one of the highlights of my life. I didn't even know that when I went down there. I mean, I went down there to pay my respects, and I appreciate the invitation you extended for me to stand with you. Sort of like a representation of, Marion, But when I got down there, it just was overwhelming. So I just I don't know. I just never forget it. That whole Black Lives Matter. I'm a historian, and
Yes.
so I know those moments, that street, those situations in history. It's going to be so big. You know, in the moment when you're making really big history, and if there's ever been a time that I really begin to realize it, because recently, well, in the last 2 years, really, actually, the Martin Luther King Library is doing a oral history with me about Marion, because, you know, they're going to do an exhibit. And then they're also doing an oral history with me about the life that I have lived. And it was doing that I realized little things that happen that you do in life that they don't seem life altering at the time you do them, but in, you know, hindsight, people look at them and the moment that you did blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
history really puts in perspective the impact that you do in life, even though when you do it, it's like you said about the Black Lives Plaza or Marion statue, you do it because at the moment you were moved to do it because it was the right thing to do, or it was the thing that was needed at the time. But I promise you that you are going to make history in a way. You made it already, but it's going to get bigger because it was cutting edge.
Thank you.
It's exactly what it was. So everything is not symbolic and everything is not art. We had a tough time in the District of Columbia like they've had all over the country. I'm particularly happy, if there's such a thing, to live in a city where you're the mayor during this COVID period. I don't want to brag because it's a horrible time for the world, but since this thing hit, how you've protected the city, how you can get a test on any corner and get your stuff back within 24 to 48 hours. How has it been really running this city in the middle of a pandemic?
This may not sound strange to you because I think you're kind of a public administration geek too. But it has been, I mean, it has, you would marvel at how well our government has performed. Let me start there. To modify government options, standing up emergency, it's just performed so well. We, from a leadership standpoint, we're dealing with a global pandemic, a racial reckoning, and everything that goes with it, and an economic crisis caused by the shutdowns of COVID. So all of those things happening all at once. I feel grateful that I'm in the seat to make the decisions. Things that are scientifically right, but also that protect the health and welfare of our residents, do even more economy back. So here, you there?
I'm here.
Hello.
I'm here.
We're here.
All right. Well, very good. I know I'm talking your ear off. I'm gonna
No.
have to wrap up soon.
Well, don't leave before I got a
Go
couple more questions. I know you're tired.
Okay,
You have a
okay.
city to run, but I don't get this opportunity very often. I'm not letting you off the hook that quick.
I'm
Because
with
one of
you.
the things Mr. Munson started the show off by talking about the role of mentorship. The show is Nothing New Under the Sun. It came out of the fact that a lot of the things that are going on in this country, especially with our young people in protest, it's important that they know that there's nothing new under the sun, that whatever they're doing has been done before. It's their turn. They just got to do it bigger. They got to do it better, but they got to do it. And so I've had relationships, including yours, where I've had imparted information or advice, just comes out of history, not out of anything other than experience and knowing what you know. And then you look at it and you realize that a lot of my mentorships are with women and young women because, well, I love the brothers, but it takes a little extra energy for them. But with no disrespect, no disrespect, Munson, but what do you see? I mean, women are running this thing. What do you know? We got a woman as a vice president candidate. What do you see in terms of women's role right now, especially in the 2020 presidential election?
How I feel about Kamala being picked, and more importantly, that if she wasn't picked, how big of a problem it was going to be. And I heard that sentiment in all of my circles of women, that we were tired of getting picked over, especially as African American women. I was just on a call, and this is, I've been mayor almost 6 years, and relatively, I always think of myself as kind of new. When I look around and I see the number of African American mayors, they all were elected after I was elected. So just in that short time, we have gone, I believe when I was mayor, it was me and African American women running major cities, over 500,000 people. And now you can look across the country, Atlanta, New Orleans, Chicago, San Francisco, all big city mayors, African American women. So and there's a real sisterhood and a circle of protection and defense that I think is so important for women. I just think that the
Yeah.
What happened? I don't know.
Just a little connection issue for that moment. I think she made a huge point, the evolution.
She's back.
So as you also, we have something else. Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
No, we're here.
We're here.
Can you hear us?
Well, they kind of call it paint, and the connection just a little tight.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. The last thing I'll mention is that the other thing that we have in common, I'm not sure where we cut off, but we love Hillary Clinton and have been super Hillary supporters. So I think the thing that we still have to confront in our country is the reluctance of American voters to elect a woman executive. That's changing when you see all these female mayors. There are also a good number of female governors on both sides of the aisle. And so how do we get to the next level where we're going to get the American people who will elect a female president? Now, Hillary had won the popular vote, so he's picked her. Did not. But we got to get over the hump.
Huh?
Yeah, we got definitely get the vote out. That's going to be a key component to this 11-3-20 that you got on your shirt tonight.
I'm gonna wear it every day until 11-3-20. But one of the things, Maribel, if you're still there, I want to ask you about when you cut out. We were talking about prior to that. We were talking about the fact that people had an attitude that they weren't going to select a woman. I want to say personally, even though we have a lot of private moments, I can say to the world, the day I called you after they selected, I have never seen you so intense. You had worked yourself into a level. So it's not just the women. You were like, you had to come down. You had worked up. You was like, you had an attitude. If they hadn't done it, I mean, it meant so much.
It meant so much. And you're right. I
Mhm.
had like you would have thought I was being selected because that's how much anxiety I had about it, and I was so
Yeah,
scared that they would do the thing. I
I
had a
know.
lot of anxiety. I was
You did.
relieved and thrilled, but I had a lot of anxiety about it leading up. And that's part of how we have this like stress of being
Mhm.
overlooked and step that we like work. We just always expect that we're going to get screwed somehow out of
Yep. Yep.
do. And that's all I think it was. I had really worked myself up. That's a
Yeah.
good way you're very observant.
Yeah. I was trying to celebrate. You were still mad. I was like, it happened. Yeah, but if they had, I said, wait a minute, it happened. Calm down. I'll never forget that. But the good thing about this, though, and I want to know if you feel this. One of the things that I am so excited about is as a women, there are women, they have our back. Black women have each other's backs.
Absolutely.
And there are so many organizations. I mean, the sisterhood out there, it's amazing. Do you feel that Black women have your back?
Yes, I do. And I feel that we recognize, and I really see it in Kamala's position now, that we have to speak up for each other.
Mm-hmm.
We can't let the world do to her what it did to Hillary. It wasn't
Right.
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 They did.
It wasn't right. Right.
It wasn't right. And now we all thought we had to be partial or we couldn't stand up and protect and defend her because she's tough. She can protect herself. That's bull, especially warranted. And it's personal or it's has nothing to do with the election. Like, no, that's not right. And we have to say it's not right. And it's okay for us to say we're doing it because she's our sister.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but I tell you, there's a network out there, and I said, and I think I told you,
fine.
I said that, yeah, that if they hadn't picked, that would have been the biggest mistake they had ever made. It would have been the biggest mistake. And the Black women, but no, we didn't just sit and pray and wait. We were sending letters and public letters and getting thousands of Black women to sign on. We was being proactive. You know that, right?
I know that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that.
Yeah. Well, I know that you have to go.
All
and
right,
I don't
Miss Cora, I gotta go.
But before you leave, I want to ask you about one other thing that most people in this country don't know a lot about. Because of your initiative and your support, along with the city council, we have determined and decided that it selected go-go music as the official music of DC.
Yes,
really quick,
yes.
Why was that important to the city?
That's important to the city, and I do have to acknowledge the council for moving legislation, not just for the designation, but also to set up some infrastructure behind it. And it's important because it's our music. It's a real art form. It's real music, like jazz and rock and roll and R&B, and they are celebrated in cities all over our country. And we have to celebrate go-go music too, but we also have to invest in it because it is an art form that if we're not investing in the artists and the venues, that it could die. And this is a very important time to make those investments.
Well, y'all you want to take out our mayor with a little go-go music before we close down? So here we go.
All right, Miss Cora, bye-bye.
Bye, Mayor Bowser. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
You have one, you've got Tamika, another legacy member there on the front line. I know you've got to go, but just how do you think, given that this new verdict, many will want to know how this lack of indictment, when I think of Mayor Bowser, you and Tamika, you're both on the front line. What does this mean?
Breonna Taylor's decision today, yeah, it's hard to talk about.
Yeah, it's certain. It certainly doesn't answer the questions of what our lives matter. It's in this justice system. And, you know, it's say.
Yep. It definitely doesn't answer any questions other than.
It doesn't answer any questions. And I think I was just on another call where I understand that there's still some investigating. I want to look at what's been written and said about the shooting officer and how they justify an officer not being held accountable in this situation is really beyond me based on the facts that I know. So we just have to keep working to reform our systems and working so that there's never a Breonna Taylor whose family doesn't get justice. So sorry to close on that note, but I want to thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I love you madly.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Mayor
Thank
Bowser.
you.
We appreciate you.
You bet. Bye.
Nothing new under the sun. Tough situations. You've seen them before. Loss. It's always real. Sacrifice. Part of the movement.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I'm really in deep thought about this. I'm in deep thought about this verdict and on several levels, because I in the movement back in the day, we had a win, a sub win, a triple win. We had different categories of when we went in, what we wanted to come out of it. We were realistic, and that we always were very, I'd say, idealistic, because we always wanted to go for the most, but we knew what a win was. And I don't know within the movement, have they discussed that? Because there are so many things up against that being a verdict of everybody being charged. And I watched very carefully, something I haven't done, because I had to pull away from the television for a while. It was just too gross. I mean, it was just too sad, and I had too many things going on. But I watched the police, the criminal justice experts on television that have always comes on a regular basis, and they always have, expert opinions based on their jobs, their history. And they were struggling today. And because it's, you got to be smart about what a win is. So the details we know because of Tamika and the people that we know inside the movement. But as I watched, for instance, the former police chief from here, and he was the commissioner in Philadelphia, he talked about the fact that the guy shot a gun on the inside, and the other people opened fire. Now, from the criminal justice side of it, when you hear a gun, you shoot. And I mean, so would we expect, based on just that little piece that happened right there, what do we expect to come out of that? And so I'm not sure that they looked at the various breakdowns of who did what to determine what would be justice and what would be, it is what it is. And so I don't know. I think there was, the discussion about the fact that one person, whoever they were, said they heard the knock. It's just so much. But I don't think it's satisfying what they're down there to do. And I don't know what will. Like the mayor said, they're still looking into some things. And I still don't even know the guy that is being charged, what that charge even represents. Do you know?
No clue.
Mm-hmm.
Tough situation.
So that was, to me, they just threw somebody out there and somebody got charged. They had to have in the narrative charged. And so he was the one that drew the short straw on that. But to this point, I'm not clear. What do you think about it?
Well, I think it's unfortunate. I knew that we were definitely not in a friendly territory. So I'm not surprised that we have seen from Ahmaud Arbery, where his mother put him in the grave, thinking that her son had done something wrong because they were able to control the narrative. I think it may have been like going in a town where you knew that you weren't allowed to stay in any hotel, and we showed up. Literally, Louisville is that place. But until we all understand, we are asking a system currently that has no respect for our lives. And literally, you're in a territory that literally segregation, oppression are the dominant philosophies from the top to the bottom. So I was not surprised at all. Did not think that the culture of that area was to provide justice. And given a vote outside of that city, they would have never paid a dime.
Well, and I think that was why they did that also, to soften the blow, to give the $12 million and say, we're compensating or reparations or whatever you want to call it. And of course, Tamika was saying to me that a lot of Black people, a lot of the people in the community thought that was a sellout, why your money, that's not justice. And she had to say reparations, that's not justice, blah, blah, blah. So we also a complicated people, being able to sort through this. It doesn't always turn out with the right or the most logical conclusion. So I think it's all very confusing. I really do. I haven't spoken to anybody since this has gone down because I don't know what they were anticipating. Hence, I don't know what they're doing. And I haven't been on television because I had to do this show. So I don't know if there's any eruptions, so to speak, that is created because of it. But I think they tried to soft pedal it as much as they could. They tried to contextualize it as much as they could. And they tried to take the edge off by giving one indictment and $12 million. And I think that was their strategy. So now we have to see how we react to that.
Yeah, and they actually created a backdrop for violence as well, as they staged all of the barricades and were literally aligning themselves for police overtime. They were aligning themselves to bring in.
They sent all that out.
So all of those preparations were for a bad movie. So even organizers and our young people, we said that early this morning, we need to be conscious about how we enter conflicts that we cannot win, that are traps literally made for our anger, for our lack of judgment. When you're talking about a community that has made felony charges for individuals who are protesting. So you have to be aware because, when you think of Sandra Bland, she was alone in a jail cell. We have had those that have come out of jail cells so far safely out of Louisville. We don't want to continue to push in a scenario where we know that justice may not be served right now. We might have to go back and revisit this with the new administration. So if people are wondering why, if people are angry, they need to show up at those polls. They need to take their anger and place it in the movement. Let that drive your ballot. Let that make you and your friends drive yourselves to the polls, because then we can review this. It is not done. It's not finished. And as your mentee likes to say, until justice. So we've got to make sure that we don't become and victimize ourselves versus be very strategic, be very vigilant, and actually plan and organize how. I don't want us to sabotage the movement or even sacrifice leadership based on this particular moment in time. This does not serve us for all time, but just for this moment. So I really want us to be very precautious as we move forward in an area where there is no respect of person, which is demonstrated by the lack of indictment.
You're absolutely right. The first time Tamika and them were going down there, I said to her, it reminds me of what my mother said to me 40 years ago. I said to her, I said, you're going to the South. I said, it's a totally different animal down there. It's not like coming to Washington every other month, getting arrested, coming out, texting somebody to pick you up. It's not like that. They're going to criminalize you down there, and they possibly, your life could be in danger. Just know it's a different environment. It's a different culture. It's the culture that sent John Lewis to the jail cell 20 some times. I said, that hasn't changed. And they lived right on up to it. 15 hours for doing absolutely nothing. And right around the corner was the white people who was hanging people in effigy and having their protest, nothing. So I respect and applaud them for going back. After that, I'd have been like, as my mama used to say in the Bible, I'd have shook the dust from my feet. I'd have had enough of them people. But that's what young people and courageous people are about. They went on back and made themselves a home. And that right there, what they did, that's going to be big history one day. That's going to be big history that they went and settled down there for 60 days or more. That's amazing. We don't do that. That's not the kind of movement that we have normally. They have protests, they have blah, and everybody goes home. But to come down into a territory that really, literally, these people would kill you if they could, and have killed people. And to be there, that's admirable, but you're absolutely right. You don't want them going into a trap. You don't want them going into a trap that creates, a violent situation that there's no way out. And so that's why I was wondering what was their idea of what a win was. What is it? How do you handle what just happened? Was there a strategy for it? I just don't know, because I know that nobody thought that the result was going to be too much different than what it was. You didn't expect much more, did you?
No, I have not seen or heard anything, even with the delay. I mean, I don't know that sunshine in this particular instance is going to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the leadership of your mentee, Tamika, and her effort of her team is needed, because we have to have soldiers. We've got to have those individuals who understand that you have to camp out to stamp out justice. I just want them to be cautious, and for them to understand that we love them, and that this is a moment in time where you need to be aware that you are definitely in enemy territory, that you are not at home, you are not surrounded by love, and that you literally have people who have nothing to do at this moment. They have lost their jobs. Some have lost their homes. They're being radicalized against Black people. Some of the radicalization is happening right now. It's not pro-Black. They're using it as anti. When you think about someone who will actually create and put a felony charge on an innocent persons for denying them rights to protest, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
That's a systematic problem. And they know the system. It's their system. We're in a territory where it's their system. And you've seen that. You've seen it as a woman where Shirley Chisholm was not welcomed, even amongst her own.
Yeah, I was just speaking of Shirley Chisholm. That's always my favorite topic, but I was just looking at a video. I don't know if I sent that to you or not, that I ran across, where she was telling the story. Once I think she had retired from Congress, how she used to go to the lunchroom and sit by herself.
You shared that. You did share that.
Because nobody wanted her to sit there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's why I keep her over my left shoulder, because people really don't understand what she went through. She went through her own little suppression journey with our people. I don't ever leave us out, because it wasn't as much white people as it was our people. So I don't know, but you're right, and I am concerned. Have you spoken to anybody in the movement since the verdict came out?
They were supposed to show up at RIDE, but they are a little busy. Yandy, and I think that you're in the midst of something, so I want to support. But I, like you, I think that it's a moment that they might want to move back, because now people are taking and have entrenched their position. They are not going to do anything related to that, They passed the Breonna Taylor law. So we've got to think about it. And we don't want to incite the wrong images for that very reason that you have on your chest. That very
one of the things she did say to me, speaking of what you're saying, that just came to me, is that one of the things they plan to do, I don't know if they've changed that, but it's to go across the state and try to ensure that the Breonna law is all the major jurisdictions or statewide, and that's a worthy goal. But I don't know. I'm ready for it to come home. Actually,
it's a tough. I'm more concerned by the person radicalized in the hate that will find solace in hurting people we love, find solace in hurting our leaders.
Wanton, unabashed violence with no thought of consequences.
No, and get a glass of water or maybe a trip to a Burger King. I mean, that's those are the things that young man who went out and had a gun and mother drove him. Everybody knew the very intentions from the start of the trip. And that's more of what my concern is, that individual who will find peace in actually harming someone that we love, harming a young protester whose heart is there for someone like Breonna and knows that justice needs to be served. So yes, I'm concerned, but I'm also concerned that they prepared for this moment and to meet violence with violence, that they're not gonna not have the military out. They're not gonna not have, they're gonna have all those things. They've prepared those barricades. They've had those meetings. So it's not a second thought, it's their first thought. And it could be violence against the protesters. Mm-hmm. They'll say, hey, we told you up front, do not break the law.
Told you up front.
Up front.
Well, I know we have just a few minutes left. I want to go back to the fact that my mayor came on. I enjoyed her. My goal was for her to be able to relax and people could see her real soul and her personality, her real caring, her real sister girlness, and I think that came through. I enjoyed it, and I think we also learned a lot about how difficult things are in this city. It's not easy.
I think intergenerational love is very obvious. I think the fact that she feels close enough to have conversation, to get counsel, to stay when she doesn't want to stay, listen when she may not want to hear. I think that we all have to know that. And that was the exchange that everybody saw. There's a level of respect that you don't have to feel hurt if somebody said, no, we'll do this. Mm-hmm. And acquiesce and understand that was love, and you'll get to do it one day. Mm-hmm. So I think intergenerationally, the exchange, just to know how important it is to be able to hear and love. So she wasn't just a mayor. She was a daughter. She was a leader. She was able to hear and know that your love for her is clear. And I think just being able to see leaders current, but to see her growth, because she shared the growth. It wasn't, I'm mayor, I was once a council person. I was once a person who was being mentored by Marion Barry. And I saw, and the most beautiful thing I heard her say is, I am here to protect the citizens. And I don't have an army, but I do have art. I don't have guns, but I've got paint. And I think that spoke louder, did not hurt anybody, but uplifted everyone who was being offended by people who did have tanks, by people who did have guns, by people who actually had arms and was really there to harm them. She demonstrated that you could, as a leader, non-violently make a statement that the world has heard and implemented the similar instances in their city to recognize that plaza and its impact as an iconic moment in human history, not just Black history, but human history.
Oh yeah, because the people replicated it everywhere. But it was brilliant and it was brave. It was very brave. If anybody ever asked you what she's made of, that right there, that one thing, that was amazing. And I like that because I know that's who she is. But I know many times because she is who she is, she's a mayor, she has to be mayoral. But I know in her heart, that's why she and my husband remind me so much of each other, because she really does have her heart. And you could pick it up from listening to her. And she also has moxie, that sister girl thing I like, I'm telling you, the day after they picked Kamala, I called her and she was in a fit. I was like, Miriam, calm down. They did it. But if they hadn't done it, I was like, but they did it. And she said, I hadn't slept for 2 nights, but she wasn't alone. I was with a lot of women that win. We were sending letters, the Joe Taker, I introduced her on the show. Yeah. We were emotionally invested and involved. And the day that they picked her, we spontaneously had 200-300 women on the phone in 2 hours, talking about it and praying about it and overjoying. So, to me, that's sort of like a Harriet Tubman moment. We off the damn plantation for a minute, where every once in a while, you feel a little liberated. So, but before we close, I want to talk to you about the fact that my shirt says 11/3/20. I don't know what's supposed to happen on that day. What's that date about, Mr. Munson? What's happening? Is that my birthday?
That is your birthday of a new administration coming in. That is your birthday to definitely say that you have an appointment. That if you haven't done it, which we want you to vote early, because you can vote now. If you can vote right now, then do it. But on that day, if you don't do anything else, if you don't eat, if you don't sleep, stand in line as long as it takes. Be there as brave as whatever it takes to brave the storm, to brave the situation, to make your vote count for every ancestor that we've ever had that made a way so that we could see freedom until freedom.
Absolutely.
Vote on that day.
And we started that very, very early with our kids. And so soon coming up, I want to introduce you to the Blacks on Wax program. It's 13, I think it's our 14th year. It's young people who personify our leaders, past, present, and future. And the theme this year is Vote Your Choice, Your Life, more now than ever before. It's up virtually. They haven't finished editing it, but when they finish, very soon, I'm going to bring some of those scholars on there, show you some videotapes, and let the people see around the country what our kids can do and the messages that go out. So I'm looking forward to it. Until our next meeting, remember to keep your guard up, your eyes open, your ears to the ground, and stay woke, because, of course, there's nothing new under the sun. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you, my dearest and leader, Cora Masters Barry. There's nothing new under the sun. This has been a phenomenal, enjoyable evening I've spent with you. And if you do not do anything, you don't have to be in the streets, but you must be in the struggle, everybody. You must be in the struggle. I'm Munson Steve with Miss Cora Masters Barry, a phenomenal leader, woman, dynamic personality, who we want to thank you for being here and bringing us nothing new under the sun. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.